Dystopia warning, obviously. I've been making political content for the best part of 3 years, and every single one of those days I have regretted deeply reading George Orwell's 1984. In fact, I've regretted having any thoughts in my head whatsoever. Because once you see what the government is doing to the British people, you can't really unsee it. And the further that you delve in, the worse it gets. I can definitely say during the most batshit last 3 years of my life that I've never seen a serving Prime Minister take to the podium via stepladder and say that he's going to scrap policies that don't exist. Now, during his camp speech of lies, I was absorbing about 3 different information sources at once, so I didn't really pay attention to the detail of what it was that he said that he was scrapping. It was only afterwards that I looked at the detail of the speech and was like, what? What the fuck is a meat tax? None of these policies listed here have ever existed. It was particularly troubling for me because I was left not knowing my financial situation. You see, when it was announced, I was on the way to the airport in a car share with 7 bins full of meat. Pretty hot in there, you know, because of all the black market insulation. Can't afford the real stuff. Not a fucking Tory. So naturally, anyone with sense was like, what the fuck is, what's going on? What is he talking about? Credible journalists were baffled. Remember what I said yesterday about how this is just him, you know, putting on a push-up bra for the billionaire press barons? What do you think the tabloids went with today? And there we have it. The Murdoch press wanking themselves silly over scrapped policy that never existed. One of the best things about this is that people have been coming up with all sorts of funny memes. You know, it's how we cope, it's the British way. They've been calling him, you know, funny names like 7 bin Sunak. Sunak and his 7 deadly bins. Total twat, you know, those kind of things. Count Binface has been having a hell of a time. He's ahead in the polls. You want to know the best bit about it? Well, he's essentially following the economic policy of Liz Truss. Liz Truss. Now, I found out something particularly damning today, and that's Chris Skidmore's report. Brief bit of backstory here. Chris Skidmore was one of the first people to move over to Liz Truss from Team Rishi when the leadership campaign was afoot. As a former energy minister, he was tasked with writing a report to look into how they could best harness the growth potential of net zero. And his report was overwhelmingly positive. He said that we should push harder for net zero because of the boost to the economy and jobs. That it was the growth opportunity of the century. Something that Labour have been discussing extensively, particularly Miliband. Labour are streets ahead on this. Obviously, Truss was booted out after tanking the economy. It landed on Sunak's desk and he was very positive about it. In spring. So what changed? What made him decide to look at Liz Truss and her shady group of Tufton think tanks and go, yeah, man, like, I want to emulate that. Oh, I don't know. Has it got something to do with Sunak's father-in-law's business, Infosys, and their multi-billion-pound contracts with BP and Shell? Could it be because everywhere you look there's a Tory donor linked to the fossil fuel industry? Could it be the thing that I know off the top of my head by now, which is that Jacob Rees-Mogg is funded by Crispin O'Day, who was married to Murdoch's daughter, who's the hedge funder that shorted the pound after Brexit, who profited from oil and gas companies after Russia invaded Ukraine, who donated 22 grand to Jacob Rees-Mogg. This is how it works. There are questions to be asked about Kwarteng and Truss, according to reports in the Times, having dinner with hedge funders before they crashed the pound. And Kwasi Kwarteng, remember him, the guy who laughed at the Queen's funeral, was reported to have had a champagne lunch with hedge funders the day after, and they encouraged him to keep going. Of course they fucking did, but what was the consequence for us? Loads of people losing their mortgages, interest rates through the roof, inflation through the roof. Now the problem is the influence that these think tanks have. They're the people that push Truss to go ahead with her crazy economic policy, probably because their shady donors benefited. Disaster capitalism, anyone? Yeah. Now the problem is that people like the ERG, the European Research Group, which is funded by us as taxpayers, has now become the Net Zero Scrutiny Group. Yeah. All the usual suspects are a part of it, including Brexit hardman Steve Baker. Just like people were conned by Brexit, they've done the damage for their funders. Their funders have reaped the rewards. So what's the next con? Leaving the European Convention on Human Rights, again being pushed by the Brexit lot. The anti-net zero brigade, again the Brexit lot, and they're using the mainstream media as their tool to paint this as an attack on your freedoms. That's what they want to sell it as. Labour's going to take away your car. They're almost painting themselves as hippies that want to look after your money, and Labour as the authoritarians. It is mad and it is desperate, because if they really wanted to save us money and look out for us, they effortlessly could. Do you want to know the problem with this? The worst part about it is they're going to keep repeating this lie over and over and over again until people believe it. It doesn't matter whether or not it's true. Say it enough, people will believe it. They'll make it every headline until your mate repeats it in the pub. Interesting word, freedom, isn't it? Emotive. It makes you feel like it's something that you should be protecting. They're using emotive terms as marketing tools to headfuck everybody. Truth is the thing that needs to be protected. And the truth is that green policy will get us out of the mess we're in. It will boost the economy, it will encourage growth, and vitally it would slow the destruction of climate change. There's a chunk of ice in the Antarctic 5 times the size of the UK that's gone missing. Every week there's a new issue with wildfires, flash floods, destruction, death. This is not real. And it's terrifying that we have a government that puts it out as if it's fact, despite knowing that they will be contested. And what's Chris Skidmore saying? The guy that drafted that report. He's talking about how it would destabilise business confidence. Could have, created thousands of jobs. Nothing this government is doing is designed to make anything better for any of us. They're working in the interests of multi-millionaires and billionaires. And it has never, ever been more obvious than it is now. It is terrifying. Worst of all, we can't do anything about it until they give us a general election. At this point, we just have to hope that they will. We'll never forget these days, will we?